Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Raw Knuckles podcast. We'd really appreciate it if you'd like, subscribe, and share with a friend.
When I stepped on the ice, I never backed down, and I never stayed down.
And I was vicious, and I was malicious, and I don't care.
He's a freaking madman. Look at him going to town. That'll be a suspension. That'll be a fine.
All right, Dennis, welcome in the Raw Knuckles podcast. Listen, the Habs this week, not a bad week as far as the way they played. At times, they lose in Minnesota. Winnipeg 3-2 in overtime. They played a damn good road game in there. Then they come home Saturday night, and Vegas comes in. 6-4 game. God, it was an exciting game to watch at times. They were in it, and then all of a sudden they weren't. 5-2, it looks like they're done. They battle back, but it looks like they're just trading too many chances, taking too many risks, and it ends up costing them.
Yeah, they're not a great defensive team right now. It's as simple as that. Get used to these type of games, especially with a team that cycles well. It's got a lot of size around the net in Vegas. They weren't going to win that game, but it's okay. It's okay. It's you learn. It's like that's right now. Vegas and Boston are the gold standards in the NHL, so they are up against a team that is clicking on all cylinders. And if they are going to play that way, Nux, they're going to have to get 925, 930 save percentages from the goaltender from Allen and Montembaum. They're not going to get that. So this is going to be more typical of a week of the Habs. They played decent in Minnesota, didn't deserve to win the game. Played well in Winnipeg, got a point, and then came up against a powerhouse team and lost. So at 5-6-1, they are what their record says they are. So I think you got to concentrate on, the scoring by Caulfield, the all-around game by Suzuki. Slafkovsky scored another goal. I think that's what you got to take away from these games. Not did they win or lose, and how did they look about them. They're not going to look good on a lot of nights. And you're right, they are going to trade a lot of chances because they are certainly not a shutdown team. But Nuts, I'll say to you, the way this league is playing right now, I don't think you need to shut teams down. You have to outscore them. It used to be a race to 3 in this league. I talked to Todd McClellan about this on Saturday. It's more a race to 4 now. Like, you got to score. You got to get 3.5, 4 goals a game. If you're not out averaging that, you're not winning in this league right now.
Yeah, and listen, it's a good sign because for years here, it's been, keep the other team to 2 goals. We got a chance to win. And then they even had a hard time scoring goals back then. Now they're looking at certain games. Boy, this team can explode and do some things. Suzuki line. Kirby Dach, I think it surprised me, this kid coming over here. I guess the surprise for me is, why did Chicago give up on him so soon? This kid seems like he's got it going on right now.
Yeah, well, his development was weird, right? When the first season in Chicago, I remember, first half of the season, he was terrible. He was on the fourth line, didn't do anything. Then there was a pause in play. He came back, and he was a monster at the end of the season. He was one of the reasons Chicago beat Edmonton in that playoff series in the bubble. He was fantastic. And then for whatever reason, maybe lack of maturity, he just wasn't the same player after that. He looked to be the 2C behind Jonathan Toews. And it just didn't work. And they tried, and they just gave up. But when you give up on a 21-year-old player, you have to scratch your head and say why that happened. I think part of it was his development, and he just wasn't fitting into their system. So at this point, it looks like the Habs got the benefit of that.
All right, the Habs have an issue with forwards, 15 forwards. It looked like they're putting Pitlick on waivers today. There's a lot of talk that it was going to be Dadonov. They're going to try and move him. He's on the ice today on a line. Pitlick isn't practicing. He's going on waivers at 2. So does this bode well for Juraj Slafkovsky?
Yeah, I think so. And I would play him. He doesn't look overwhelmed. Like, he's not going to play 18 minutes a night. He's not Mark Stone, right? But to go back to junior, like, what that's going to do? He can go dominate. That's the conversation they're having about Shane Wright in Seattle as well. Like, what good will it do for these kids to go back and play? Look, they'll get ice time and they'll dominate. And what good is it? It doesn't serve them. Slafkovsky has to get used to playing against men every night, and the travel, and the 3 games in 4 nights, because it's going to happen anyway. If it's next season or last season, this is the perfect season to do it. The expectations are low. He can play 12 to 14 minutes a night, find his way, maybe get up to the top 6 by the time the season's over. But again, there's no pressure on this kid. As much as there's a pressure on being a first overall pick in this market, there's not a lot of pressure when the expectations of the team performance isn't high. So let him get out there, let him take his lumps, let him go through scoring streaks where he's not scored in 10 games, which he's probably never dealt with before in his life. I think it's a great opportunity for players like this on lesser teams to stay up in the league. I think there's less of an interest in sending players back right now because it doesn't take because by the time of their end of their rookie season, they're not rookies anymore. So there may be value, and he's not starting from 0.0 next season, which he would if you send him after 9 games. Because here's the thing, I get it. You may not want to burn the entry level, the first year of the entry level deal, but what benefit does it do to Slafkovsky or Wright or any other player to play 9 games and go back to get a taste? What does that even mean? How does it help for your development? I want these players here, even on a lesser role, even if they're not playing every night, to be around the team, to learn what it's like to be a professional, not to be the guy in junior anymore. To be, okay, you got to earn your way, and this is the start of it. So I'm all for Slafkovsky, and you're right. They do have many forwards, but this is one kid that I would want him to develop and learn from the veterans that are on the team right now.
Well, he's played 9 games, right? Game 10 is Tuesday. So if he plays in that game, he's here, right? Game 10?
He could go. Well, the first year of his entry level deal will be burnt. But when you do that, you don't send the kid back then. If you had a design to send him back, you would send him back now. I don't see any reason for it because, again, it's not like who's going to play if he doesn't play? If it's Mike Hoffman or Dadonov to raise their trade value, you know what you have in those players. Those players aren't 22 years old. They're over 30. You know what you're going to get, regardless if they play 10, 15, or 20 games. So you're not going to showcase Mike Hoffman. You know what Mike Hoffman's going to give you? He's going to give you offense. He's going to help you on the power play. So if they do decide to trade him, that's where the team goes. So how much scouting do you have to do for Mike Hoffman or Dadonov? You don't. So again, if those guys sit out because Slafkovsky's playing, I don't have a problem with it because at some point, some team's going to think they're going to need offensive help, and they can call up Hughes and say, okay, what can we get from one of these 2 players?
All right, Josh Anderson suspended 2 games by the NHL for his hit on Pietrangelo on Saturday night. Listen, he's tracking them all the way. Pietrangelo come up the boards. He kind of bobbled the puck. He gets it back. Just bump it by those 2 guys and get ready for the hit. Instead, he turns. I get it. The onus is on Anderson to pull up there. But come on. Don't put your – I don't know why guys put themselves in that situation. And listen, he deserves the 2 games. I get it. He did it. I get it. But here's a guy, this caliber player, who's, pulling up and turning toward the board. It's stupidity.
He contributed to it. He did contribute to it.
It's stupidity by Pietrangelo. It is. And right there, all he has to do is bump it by. He's got Anderson to deal with, and I don't know who else was stepping up there. But you bump it by those 2 guys and then get ready for the hit. And instead, he turns and he gets nailed. He deserves the 2 games. I get it. But sometimes these guys today, when they turn into the boards like that.
You're right. You're right. He contributed to the play, but again, let up and 2 games is I had no problem with it.
All right, enough about the Habs right now. I want to get around the league, talk a little bit about what's going on in the Boston Bruins. How in the hell do you make a mistake like this? Now, I play with Cam Neely. I know him well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I play with Don Sweeney. I know him well. I can't believe. Did this have something to do with looking at the Canadian situation, signing Logan Mailloux, and then they say, okay, and they're totally different things, right?
Yeah.
But it has to do with the player's character and what he's done.
Yeah.
Away from the rink, and man, I don't. How did the Bruins make that mistake?
Well. There's institutional failure by the Bruins, right? And I think it even goes more to the reaction from the room, from the players. Like, and Bergeron has said it, he's been outspoken about it. He said, well, we didn't universally voted that we didn't want this guy, but we didn't want him on the team or signed for the team. Now, there's a lot of conflicting information. Like, how was he ever eligible? If Gary Bettman said he wasn't eligible to the NHL, how was he able to sign with Central Registry if he was never eligible? So I kind of question that. It's a mess. And I think at this point in time, Miller should probably look for another career at this point in time, because it's like now it's showing a light back on it. And like what he did was horrific. And certain guys in the room didn't want, and I think the thing that Bergeron said was like, we are an organization that wants to help people, and this doesn't really help anyone other than maybe one kid who misbehaved and is going to get potentially paid him millions of dollars. So it was a lack of, I think sometimes organizations think they're Teflon and can just go sign a player and without consulting anybody, which is kind of ridiculous. And it is given who this player is in his history, not to go to the league and say we're going to sign him and that's what Bettman said. That's stunning to me. Like you have to consult with your team, with members of the organization, and with the league and with the commissioner when it's a situation that this player is coming out of, where I don't get it. I really don't get why they didn't think it was important to talk to a lot of people about this and decide, other than we think he's a good player, that this works for the organization, because it's certainly a black eye for the organization. I'm sure that, and they still haven't talked to the kid's parents that was abused. Anybody hasn't talked to anybody. So it's just, they're going further down a rabbit hole that they probably didn't want to go down. And this player should just move on and try to do something else with his life, because I doubt he's ever going to be an NHL player.
And again, this doesn't look good for the NHL either. And listen, the Mailloux signing, the Habs took a beating over it. Looks like he's going to play at some point. This happens. The Kyle Beach thing. I mean, from the outside looking in, some people got to be scratching their heads.
Well, yeah, but that's true in any walk of life. You go to any organization, there are people that have the questionable backgrounds that are working. Like ESPN, you think remember ESPN, John Skipper had to resign because a cocaine dealer was going to blackmail him. So it's every walk of life. So the question is like, how much background check do you want to do on these people and stuff like that? So I get it. And I get that. I believe in second chances, but in this situation, given that the player hasn't been contrite, hasn't made an apology, hasn't done anything to make amends, and his agent Eustace King, who I know, who's based here in Los Angeles, who's a really good guy, released a statement yesterday about it. I just don't, it's about, restorative justice and all this other stuff. It sounds really good. I think in this particular case, even though a person should have a right to make a living, I just think that the NHL is not an option for him right now. So I can't play and this hockey culture stuff, and people say it's another, yes, there's going to be random situations where things are done wrong and bad people get away with stuff, and maybe they're included in the NHL. But that's true in any walk of life. I think when I think of all the good things that's happened from the sport, and I see all the great people I've dealt with, that's hockey culture too. So this stuff is wrong. This stuff needs to be rooted. Racism needs to be rooted out of the game. But don't blame the NHL for everything, for bad acts for a player that, that probably shouldn't be in the league. Yeah, it's a black guy. You're right. It's not systemic. This stuff that racism is systemic and all this stuff it's not. There are situations that happen, and you have to rectify them and make sure that people are punished and you move on from them, and they don't have a right to earn and I feel bad for Kyle Beach, right? But to say this is rampant in the NHL, that's not true either. So it's when you have to deal with it, it's going to come up again. It's not the last time we're going to have a situation like that, because they're just bad people in the league and people that behave and think there's no consequences for their actions. And I think that's the worst thing about Miller. There's consequences for actions. And what he did was so wrong. And not to say, hey, look, I've talked to the family. I've talked to the individual. I've apologized. I feel awful. That hasn't happened. And when that hasn't happened, then, again, it's a privilege to play in this league. I don't think he's earned the right to earn that privilege.
All right, game against the Florida Panthers, LA Kings. Matthew Tkachuk suspended 2 games.
Yeah.
At the end of the game, kind of like late in the third period, right? taking a shot at the goalie. Did he cause an injury there at all, or did it look worse than it was?
No, potentially it was. But you're sticking your stick in the mask. That's a dirty. He's sneaky dirty. And Matthew Tkachuk will tell you that he will tell you he did nothing wrong. Like I talked to guys that have been around him at the U.S. development team, and he'll say, "No, I just was going for the puck," and you can't do that. And the people were look. Jonathan Quick was not hurt, but potentially putting a stick in the cage that could blind the player. So I got no problem with it. I expected a suspension. I asked Todd McClellan after the game, "Do you think he was intentionally trying to hurt someone there?" And Todd answers every question, and he said to me, "I'm not going to answer that question." So by not answering the question, you know what his answer is. Of course he wasn't. And that's Matthew's game, and I get it. He's a disturber around the net. I get it. I understand it. That was a dangerous play, and it's not a hockey play. And so the 2 games were warranted. Maybe give him a 3rd game, but you can't be going around doing that. But that's what that player does.
All righty, let's go around the league. We'll start with the Metropolitan, Dennis. Jersey right up top. I mean, does this team surprising you right now?
Yeah, very much so. Because their puck possession game is amazing. I think the top puck possession game. And Jesper Bratt's been unbelievable. Okay. But their defense has really stood up. To me, that's it. John Marino coming over from Pittsburgh. I know had some cap issues. To get John Marino to really solidify the defense. Dougie Hamilton looks like the guy that they signed for $9 million a year. And they're still not getting great goaltending. Vanacek's been okay. But, yeah, I'm very surprised by this team. If they can keep Jack Hughes healthy, with Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes as a 1-2 punch at the center, and they get some scoring from their wings, it's a great start. And remember, Nux, that's why you don't listen to fans. Because after 2 games, they were chanting "Fire Lindy." Yeah. I don't think they're chanting "Fire Lindy" right now. They probably think he's coach of the year. You think he's up for the Jack Adams in the course of a couple of weeks. So you have to have patience. And the goaltending wasn't very good. So I think that the goaltending has to stand up. But their offense has been really, really good. I really like their offense. But to me, it's a surprise. I did not think they would be challenging, even this early, a team like Carolina for the lead in the Metro.
Yeah, I played with Lindy in New York, and I absolutely love the guy. He's a great teammate. And I felt so bad for him when they were chanting, "Fire Lindy." Oh, God, the poor bastard. But look at him now. I hope that continues for him. And looking at that Metropolitan down the bottom, Wash, Pittsburgh, Columbus. Mm-hmm. Columbus, 3-9-0. Listen, I know there was going to be some issues there, right? When the things happened there that happened as far as going through and guys moving in and out, and they bring in Johnny Gaudreau. But, God, poor Johnny ain't the answer either right now.
Well, he doesn't skate backwards and he doesn't play goal. Their goaltending and defense has been horrible. And granted, I guess Colorado got healthy against them. But look, the one game they lost 6-3, they were down 3-0 and fought back to 3-3. So there's still some try in this team. It's just there's no structure and they're not getting any goaltending. Now, Corpuscello just came back. He was injured. They've had a bunch of injuries in the net. But this team that, like, even with Johnny, you thought, okay, maybe they're a wild card team. They're not a wild card team. Their defense and goaltending has been atrocious, and that's why they're at the bottom of the conference. They're just not a very good team right now. I'm not sure how Johnny's going to fix that. They're going to have to outscore their mistakes, and when you do that, you don't win a lot of games 5-4 in this league, Knox, and that's what they probably have to do at this point in time. So it's been a struggle. Not totally surprised. Because when I looked at their goaltending defense, it's going, okay, they may score some goals. They may be a better team offensively, but the other side of the puck really hasn't been there at all for them this season.
We're talking last week about the Leafs and the coach and possibility. It looked like it might have been on the chopping block. Next thing, they win a couple games, a big one against Boston. Obviously, their second loss of the season. They bounce back, and things look good for Sheldon Keefe right now. But when I look at – and listen, I know Detroit's rebuilding, and they have been going through a lot of pain the last couple of years. But are we seeing the fruits of that right now? And can that continue, Dennis, what Detroit is doing?
With Detroit, yeah, because they've got a lot of talent. Mo Seider's a man. He was the Calder winner. He's going to play 22 minutes a night. This kid Soderblom was 6'8" on the third line is really good. But here's the key. They have to sign Bertuzzi. They have to sign Dylan Larkin. Like, those two guys are unrestricted at the end of the season. You can develop kids like Lucas Raymond and Mo Seider. But if you don't sign those two core players, then you're taking two steps back, and more so Dylan Larkin than Tyler Bertuzzi. You could probably replace Tyler Bertuzzi, but he's a 25, 30 goal scorer. Yeah, you have to be patient. But here's the question. Do you trust Stevie Yzerman to do what he did in Tampa and Detroit? If you do, then they're along the right path. They have parts. But when you sign that many free agents, and look, David Perron's been great. St. Louis probably regrets the fact that he's playing in Detroit right now. They've signed a lot of free agents. And when you sign that many free agents, like you're not a playoff contending team. So they're transitional players. They get to a point where the other players develop, and then they can be a contender. But they're doing all the right things. They're an exciting team. They score goals. They're on the right track. Do I think they're a playoff team this season? No. But they're much tougher out this season. You have to come and play 60 minutes if you're going to beat Detroit because their offensive weapons are pretty good.
All right, and you got Toronto, Tampa, Florida, Buffalo. Yeah. Hey, they're playing better hockey, more consistent. Ottawa, though, God, I think people expected more from this team in the early going here, and they're not getting it.
Well, Josh Norris being out for the season, that really hurts them. That's them losing their number one center.
Yeah.
So now you're going to have to move Stützle up to play the first-line center. He's really a great second-line center probably in this league, not a first-line center. So that's part of the issue. Cam Talbot just coming back. But again, their defense, I wasn't sure. But I didn't say this is a hot team that's going to improve by 30 points. I mean, they'll be better. They'll be better with Giroux. They'll be better with DeBrincat. They'll score more goals. Again, I think the goaltending, is Cam Talbot going to stay healthy now? That's one question. And is their defense good enough? I just don't think it is. So they'll be high-scoring games. They'll be better. I think they're on the right track because they got parts. Love Shabbat. I mentioned the young kids. Jake Batherson's really good. I really love Stützle. But, again, it's a team that has like the makings of a core Nux that can be a championship contender. They just need to fill in more holes at this point in time. So I don't see them close. I think for them, a successful season is if they play 500 hockey. So that's one step. You go from like 60 points to like 80 points, and then you make the jump to maybe 95 to 100 after that. So I think that they'll be more entertaining. They'll be more fun if they get somebody. And it's good to be being more entertaining since they're up for sale. So you like an exciting team to be bought. But, yeah, I agree with you. I think they're not going to be in the running when we get down to like post-trade deadline and once we get to the last 20 games.
All right, we head out west to Central, Dallas at top. Winnipeg, honestly, I'm surprised they're where they are right now. Second spot there in the Central. And then you got Colorado, and then 500, below 500 Nashville, Arizona is where they are. But St. Louis, wow, are they going to have to dig out again to make the playoffs here with Berube, another miracle, or what?
Yeah, and Berube doesn't know what to do. I mean, the team can't score goals. It's simple as that. They had a 3-on-0 against L.A. last week. They didn't get a shot on net. Jordan Carter was a -17. I love that player. Like, he got a long-term deal. Robert Thomas, they cannot score. And Berube doesn't know what to do. He goes, I can't tell you that we miss wide-open nets, and at the other end of the ice, there's guys, they're shooting layups against us. They're not defending at the net. And I think that's the more – look, you go through dry spells as offensive. But for this team to play this bad defensively where they're just missing assignments, I'm sorry, that puts you in a hole that they're going to have to dig out of. Do they have the ability to win 7 or 8 in a row? I think they do. Bennington gets hot. They score more goals, but it's been a disaster at both ends of the ice. And it's been shocking because remember, Nuts, they were 3-0 coming out of the box.
Yeah.
They can't find it. They can't find a way to win. Sometimes you just find ways to win and fall into 2 points. They haven't done that because one way or the other, either they miss open nets or their D-zone coverage has been terrible. So there's a reason why they are where they are. It's just been they have not played a complete 60 minutes since the first 3 games of the season.
All right, now to the Pacific, Vegas up top. Seattle, what is going on? 7-4-2. They're right in the second spot, still early. But, you know, that bodes well for that organization.
Yeah, I don't know how many games they're going to win with Joey Decourt and Martin Jones as net, but look, people thought they would be better. Why? Because they added offense. They added Burakovsky. They added Bjorkström was there. They've added players, and they're better. If they could score, you knew they were going to be better. So I think they're taking some. I think they're sneaking up on some teams now. I think, to be honest with you, because I think that people are thinking that was the team last season that couldn't score any goals. They can score some goals. They came into LA second game of the season, won that game. So they're going to be better. But again, do I think they're a 95 to 97 point team that's going to make the playoffs? No. I think success for them is where they are right now, about 500. If they can get to 80 points and make a significant jump, which would be significant, about 15 points, that's a winning season for Seattle. Do I think they're going to do like Vegas now in the second year, make the playoffs and have a big run? I don't think so, because even with Grubauer in net, it's not Colorado in front of that goalie. He's one of those guys that had the benefit of playing with a great team, got paid, good for him. But again, I think baby steps in Seattle. It's good that they started not quickly, but good enough so that bad feeling from last season doesn't sink in. Oh, here we go again. They're playing well. They're playing well on the road. They're a tough little team. They try for this. The best thing about Seattle, they try. They give 60 minutes of effort for Dave Haxtell. That's what you want to see from this team. And they found a way to chip in some goals, so they've been winning some games. All
right, Calgary, Vancouver. Vancouver still got a ways to go to climb out of their mess. And Calgary, they just seem to be they haven't got it going on yet.
No, because they played 9 home games out of 10. Now they got to go on the road and play a lot of road games. And Huberdeau has not found his way. Uyghur hasn't been great. Nas has been okay. This team has lost. This team played 500 at home, won a big homestand to come off the back. So I'm really interested because when you added Kadri and you added Huberdeau and you added Kenzie Uyghur and they started the season well, the first couple of games was really well, they've been mediocre. They've lost games they should have lost because they just haven't been complete. They haven't made a key play. They haven't made big plays. So I think you got to be a little concerned if you're in Calgary because of the imbalance in the schedule. When you've played 9 home games and 1 road game and you're 5-4-1, you got to be a little concerned. So that maybe they're not the 115-point team that people thought they might be by making all these new additions. It's going to take a while.
Yeah, and San Jose, they're just floundering at the bottom. But, yeah, Dennis, just quickly, did you know Peter McNabb at all?
I did the Stanley Cup. I did the Stanley Cup final for SiriusXM. We did the pregame show, and we were sitting in Tampa right behind Peter and Connor McGahey when they won the Cup. And he was so happy, and he looked fine, and he looked like he was drawn. He was still gaunt. From the cancer treatment, but that was in when? That was in June or July. And to get the news yesterday that he passed was just so sad because I thought he was on the way back to good health. And so Peter's a lifer, a very smart analyst, a very good man, and more importantly, just a good man. He'll be really, really missed. I was shocked and saddened when I saw the news about Peter because last time I saw him, he was celebrating a Stanley Cup victory.
Yeah, I certainly was too. A guy I played against for years. And honestly, when I would look at Peter McNabb in a Boston Bruins uniform, he just, to me, was not a Bruin. Like, he didn't have that. He was a smooth player, great player.
He was.
And, he put the numbers up every year, scored 35, 40 goals a year. He was awesome. Great guy. So sad to hear that. So, listen, Dennis, thanks for taking the time again this week on Raw Knuckles. I appreciate it, and we'll do this again next week.
It's always great being with on Raw Knuckles. Nuts. Thanks for the time. I appreciate it.